We're not going to negotiate with a tiger. Excuse me, Mr. Tiger. I would really appreciate it if you left me alone now. I'm just minding my own business. I promise I will leave you alone if you leave me alone.
So I want to ask you, if a person is learning English and trying to make sentences and he is not able to frame correct sentences, what is more important, grammar, or he should just start speaking right away?
Focus on those 9 rules of grammar because
Mhm.
those 9 rules are basic and they are important for communication. If you spend all your time learning phrasal verbs or bizarre, unusual grammatical forms, don't bother with that. Learn a little bit of grammar and a little bit of vocabulary, and a little bit more grammar and a little bit more vocabulary. If you learn a new word, you read a news magazine and there is a word that you go, oh, that's an impressive word. None of my friends know that word. I'm going to make sure I use it in my conversation next time to be very impressive to my friends. They will be amazed at how wonderful my English is. It doesn't work that way. It really doesn't work that way when you speak to native speakers. If you use a simple word successfully, that's a good piece of communication. If you use a very unusual word that maybe no one else knows anyway, and you use it unsuccessfully, a native speaker who does that will be an object of fun and ridicule by the other native speakers.
But you have cleared one misunderstanding.
The job as a speaker of English as a foreign language is to be understood. That's the job. If you're understood, big tick, the job is done. If you are not understood,
Good evening.
good afternoon. Yes, it is just after 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay, here it is 8:47. So you are joining me from Scotland.
That is correct.
Mhm.
Far, far away.
Yes, yes. Welcome to the session. I'm so glad to have you here on my channel. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here. Uh, Thank you very much indeed for inviting me.
Yeah. So let's start with the introduction. I would love you to give a brief introduction for my viewers.
So, my name is Gordon, also known as Mr. Love, because that is my family name. It's on my passport, it's on my birth certificate. And I am a native speaker of English from the UK. I've lived and worked across the UK and across a lot of Western America, Western USA.
Mhm.
And I've been an engineer, a software developer, a management consultant, and for the last 16 years, a teacher full time. And I currently teach English as a foreign language after having written a textbook on English pronunciation, which has been a bestseller in 14 countries around the world, including India.
Wow, that's amazing.
Thank you. I'm very
Yes.
pleased.
Okay. As we are meeting for the first time, I would also like to introduce myself. I'm Meenu Puri. I was born and raised in Delhi, the capital of India, and I hold an MCA degree. So I also worked as a software developer, like you.
All right.
Yes. So later on, I switched to teaching and I started loving teaching. I have been running my YouTube channel for 4 years now, and I love helping people with English because many people struggle with English. What about your country? Since like English is the native language there, do you think anybody struggles with English in your country?
There are four native languages, that, five native languages,
Okay.
six native languages in my country. But almost everyone speaks English as a first language. So Scots Gaelic has maybe 55,000 people who speak it as a first language.
Hmm.
Scots is pretty much interchangeable with English in lots of ways, especially modern Scots. So people who speak Scots or English are easily able to code switch between them. There is a language in Northern Ireland called Ulster Scots, which is a recent derivation of Scots. There is Irish Gaelic as well, and there is Welsh. And because so many people moved to the UK, the high school that my children went to, there were 37 different first languages spoken in their high school.
Oh my God. Okay. So what do you like about teaching? You have been teaching spoken English.
Oh, spoken English. I've only been teaching a little over 3.5 years.
Okay, okay. Three and a
Um,
half years. Mhm.
I was teaching other things, mainly kids' physical activity. And before that, I was a corporate trainer, teaching people about project management and program management, things like
Mhm.
that. So I've been teaching for a long time, but I've only been teaching English as a foreign language for a few years now. Teaching is wonderful. There is a film from, I think it's from Bhutan or Nepal, and it's a story about a young graduate teacher who gets sent to teach at the world's most remote school. And he doesn't want to be there. He wants to be in the big city.
Okay.
He wants a music career. He doesn't
Mhm.
want to be a teacher. But the government agency, once he graduates, assigns him the most remote school. He's
Mhm.
very unhappy about it.
Okay.
And when he arrives in the remote village up in the Himalayas, everyone is very grateful that they have a teacher. And he can't understand it because he's just a fresh graduate. What really is he offering? And then people in the village say, teachers are the only people who are able to touch the future. They
That's
bring the next generation's knowledge and skills
Mhm.
out. And I think that's very true. I love the process when I teach someone and they understand what I'm trying to put across. And it changes their outlook. And it then changes their progress through the rest of their life.
Mhm.
My mother was a teacher,
Okay.
and she was very pleased when I started teaching English. Um, she managed to join some of my classrooms just in the final few months of her life, and she was very, very happy. And I was so pleased that my mum, who for me was an excellent teacher, the best teacher, she approved of what I was doing. So I was very happy.
Hmm. Yes. When your parents love what you do, then it becomes a blessing and it feels extraordinarily special.
Absolutely.
Tell me how you teach English. I mean, you teach English, spoken English, tenses, grammar, or pronunciation. So, what's your approach?
Principally pronunciation. My experience is almost everyone who's learning English has had many years of school English and often other English teachers as well.
Mhm.
And for people who are teachers of English but who are not native speakers of English, often, not always, but very often, they will fall back on teaching what's in the textbooks because that's easier.
True.
So almost everyone has lots of experience of being taught grammar, lots of experience of being taught vocabulary, but very few people have been taught pronunciation or other aspects of phonetics, particularly the word stress pattern of English. The method of emphasizing in English is very different to most Indian languages, certainly to Hindi, for example.
Mhm.
Many Indian languages are what are called syllable timed languages. Every time we say a little bit of a word, it takes the same amount of time. So, for instance, when people are talking in Hindi, it sounds like a very even sort of beat pattern.
Mhm.
English isn't like that. English, every time you have a polysyllabic word, every time you have a long word with more than one syllable, the easiest way to think of it as a learner, as a foreign language, is one of the syllables will be loud and as a byproduct will be slow. And the other syllables will always be quieter and faster. And this is the hardest thing to teach people. They're aware that pronunciation is different in English,
Mhm.
but no one has taught them about the word stress pattern and the importance of the word stress pattern. I was not aware of it until I did a lot of formal reading.
Okay.
Having come to teaching languages late in my career, I thought I had better put myself through proper linguistics training. I have lots of books on my desk. This is my favorite book, How
Oh,
Languages Are Learned. by
Mm,
Lightbound and Spada. It's an excellent book. There are other books that cover more or less the same space topics.
mm,
Principles of Language Learning and Teaching by H. Douglas Brown, for example. Um, but how languages are learned are the best. So I put myself through this training. So I now know about the fact that English is a stress-timed language. The amount of stress determines how much time it takes, whereas other languages like Spanish, like Hindi, are syllable timed. Every syllable takes the same amount of time.
mhm.
The other thing is that English, for people who don't speak English, it's really like one part of every long word is shouted. It's
Okay.
loud, and then
Mm,
the other bits are quiet. Loud and quiet. And
mm.
you use up a lot of breath because you're shouting so much. If I speak using a Hindi accent and I'm reading a passage of text, I can read 2.5, 3 times as long before I need to take in a breath. With English, I have to take the breath
Okay.
because I've run out of breath very early because I'm using a lot of breath.
Mm,
Yeah,
okay. In Hindi, we don't run out of breath.
absolutely. I, as I say, I sometimes read passages from magazines. Here is a global news magazine called The Economist. It's very good. And I can normally, with a Hindi style of reading, a syllable timed reading, I can easily get a whole paragraph done without breathing. In English, no. 2.5 sentences and I'm done.
Hmm. Okay, have you ever tried to learn any other language? Do you speak any other language?
Oui, bien sûr. Je parle en français, bien. So I speak French quite well. I
Okay.
had several years of schoolboy French, and I
Mhm.
visited France quite often as a child and as a young man.
What were the challenges you faced when you learned a second language?
I'm going to come on to that in a moment.
Mhm.
I did 4 years of Latin, which lets me read Italian and read Spanish, but
Mhm.
I can't listen in Spanish or Italian, and
Okay.
I can't form sentences in Italian or Spanish. So what I
Mm.
can do is I can type in my words that I want to say into Google Translate. It gives me the Italian or the Spanish. And because I can do the pronunciation, because I
Mhm.
can read the text as Spanish, I don't read it as English,
Mhm.
it means I can be understood. I don't know what I should say, but once I'm told what to say, it sounds okay.
Mhm.
I'm learning some other languages, Vietnamese, Indonesian, Turkish, Japanese,
Oh,
and they have different scripts. They're very different languages. And I don't have any real purpose in learning any one of them. So my progress is very slow.
okay.
And so my approach always is if I can get the pronunciation pretty good, I only need to learn about 100 words of a language
Oh,
because almost everyone wants to speak English, wants access to native speakers to practice with. And as
correct.
soon as they discover that I'm a native speaker of English, they want to speak English.
Mhm.
Even if I want to learn their language and I want to practice their language, almost always we end up speaking English. And that's been true even when I was a young high schooler on an exchange trip to stay with a family in France.
Okay.
So if I can learn just 100 words, enough to be polite, enough to establish that I have put in the work, people are normally very relieved to switch to English because they've been bursting, waiting impatiently to start talking in English.
Mm. Okay.
If you speak a different language, the obvious language to spend your time learning, to invest your time and effort in, is English. It is the world's telephone system.
Right.
If you already speak English, it's not clear which language you should be studying. Am I going to end up in France? Am I going to end up in Brazil? Am I going to end up in India or Pakistan or Indonesia or Japan? I don't know. And I can't learn all of the languages.
Correct. That's true.
So it's often the best thing to do is to invest my time and effort into more English. And then if I discover I'm going to one particular place, then I can focus my efforts on that particular language. But genuinely, one of the big challenges with learning other languages is knowing which language to learn.
Right. So you are lucky that your native language is spoken all around the world. And we have to learn this second language, to be able to communicate with everyone. Just with Hindi, it's not possible.
I must admit, I feel genuinely privileged
Hmm.
that a skill that everyone else needs to spend 2, 3, 4, 5 years to acquire
Hmm.
is something that was given to me
Right.
just for free.
Correct.
And that's one of the reasons why I spent so much time teaching English as a foreign
Hmm.
language, to trying to help everyone else access the communications that the world uses, which I
Yes.
was just given. I
Right.
was born this way.
Correct.
I didn't have to work for it.
Hmm. Because a child learns naturally. He doesn't have to work hard for it.
Yes, my advice to anyone who wants to learn a foreign language always is move to that country before you turn age 9.
That's the amazing
That's the
advice.
easiest way.
Yes. Because children
So many
learn so
people ignore my
fast, they
advice.
just listen and understand.
Yes.
Why do English learners practice? When they practice, they feel confident. But the moment they speak in front of someone else, they go blank.
This is because the parts of your brain that process language are recently formed. They're
Mm.
recent in evolutionary terms. But our stress response is very, very old. The parts of our brain which we share with lizards, they have stress response.
Okay.
The parts that we share with small burrowing mammals,
Hmm.
they have stress response. So our stress response system really is designed around, is it scary? Is it about to eat us? Can we fight it? Can we run away?
Mm.
We're not going to negotiate with a tiger. Excuse me, Mr. Tiger. I would really appreciate it if you left me alone now. I'm just minding my own business. I promise I will leave you alone if you leave me alone. So
Yes.
it turns out the language centers evolved later after our stress responses. And our stress response tries to make us fight better or run away better. So it takes all the blood that's not needed and it pumps it to the places that it will do most good. To the legs, so you can run away, to the arms, so you can hit things with sticks. And it takes blood away from other places. It doesn't suddenly create extra blood. It has to
Mhm.
take the blood from somewhere. It takes it from the stomach and from the guts because they take about 24 hours to process food.
Hmm.
If you're in a fight with a tiger, you know, having some extra energy in 24 hours time is not terribly useful. So it switches down the gut and the stomach. You feel butterflies in your stomach as the blood supply drains away
Mhm.
or is switched off. And another part it takes the blood away from are the language centers of the brain. We're stressed, so our brain switches off our language centers. And all of a sudden, we can't remember words. So, the great news is there is an easy fix for this. Take 3 deep, slow breaths. Allow yourself to calm. Anyone who's a yogic master will be able to do this very easily and probably won't forget their words in the first place. But if you can take 3 deep breaths, if you do it, the way I recommend is to take a deep breath and let it out slowly and evenly for as long as you can. Do it in a cycle of 3. That should bring your heart rate down by 7%, 15%, at which point your body thinks the stress has gone away. And so it stops pumping all the blood to the arms and legs and lets it return to our brain.
Mhm.
We feel calmer, and our brain starts working, which makes us feel even calmer, which allows the brain to work even better. So, taking deep breaths is a wonderful way to overcome that horrible moment when you go to say a word and the word isn't there anymore. You know the word because you've been practicing it last month,
Right.
and yet it's gone.
You mean if the stress goes away, the same person will be able to speak in front of that person?
The stress won't go away by itself, generally speaking, because you're still in the stressful situation of trying to talk to someone strange, maybe
Mhm.
foreign, using language that you're not very familiar with, so you are stressed. And then the stress response makes it more difficult to remember your words.
Mhm.
So the stress won't just go away by itself. You have to do something to help the stress go away, generally speaking. So if you can make sure to calm yourself, to de-stress yourself, then things will become easier. You won't suddenly learn words that you have never practiced before,
Correct.
but at least if you have been practicing several words, you should be able to use them now.
Right. So you mean sympathetic nervous system kicks in the moment we face someone. Our brain sees it as danger.
The situation of having to talk to someone and finding that worrisome, often we're self-conscious about talking to people in their language. We're often very anxious that we will make mistakes in our grammar or use
Mhm.
a word wrongly, or people won't understand us because our pronunciation will be too different. All of these things make us nervous, make us anxious, and that turns into stress in the body. So, yes, we
Right.
need to do the opposite. We need to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. If it's the sympathetic for stress, is the parasympathetic for relaxation. I
Right.
can never remember which way round it is, but yes, we need to
Parasympathetic is
activate.
rest and digest.
There you have it. So,
And
yes, we need to
sympathetic is
activate
fight or flight.
fight, flight, or freeze.
Mm.
Either you'll run away or you'll fight. Flight means running.
Fight or flight.
Flight later on comes to mean what birds and aeroplanes do, but initially it means just getting away.
Hmm.
And freeze is like a rabbit in the headlights or a rabbit in front of a snake. If I stay very still, maybe it won't eat me.
Okay. Can you teach me three new words?
Unfortunately, I don't know which words would be new for you and which ones would be old for you. But what I would love to do is teach you some sounds, if I may.
Okay.
I'm going to teach you the TH sound.
TH
You've,
sound.
you'll, yep. You'll have seen lots of English words like think, thought, three, this, then, that, there,
Mhm.
that begin with the TH spelling. And it
Right.
turns out there used to be two spellings. In fact, there used to be two letters in the English alphabet, one for one for th. And then the Roman monks decided those symbols were too pagan and they wanted good Christian letters. And they decided instead of having two spellings, they would just use one. And that has been confusing English learners, native speakers, and learners of an English as a foreign language ever since. It
Mhm.
was a very bad decision by the monks, I think. But TH has a very unusual pronunciation around the world. Uh, Only about another half a dozen languages that I know of use the sound. And there is a particular technique. You have to be a bit rude. You have to stick your tongue out. Yeah. If you don't stick your tongue out, you end up getting sounds like t or d or d.
Mm.
So
Okay.
instead of saying three, you'll say three or
Mhm.
three or
Three.
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 Yep.
Mm.
Yeah. And because it's such a common sound in English,
Mhm.
it's useful to use the English sound rather than a sound from your mother tongue, whichever mother tongue is. Every other person I've met on YouTube from India so far has been a Hindi speaker. So perhaps it's also true of you?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Okay. I have friends here in the UK who are Marathi speakers. I've met
Okay.
people online who speak Kerala and
Mhm.
lots of other languages. So I'm pretty certain that the sound doesn't exist in Hindi, that the sound exists instead. So I'm going to teach you how to make the sound and its close cousin, the sound.
Mm.
The
Okay.
trick is to stick your tongue out. You want your tongue to be flat, like this. You don't want your tongue to come out between your lips and then stick down. You don't want
Mhm.
this. That's bad. You don't want the tongue to curl up the way either. You don't want this. It has to be flat. I often say to people that you can think of the tip of your tongue like a little puppy. Normally, you try to keep it in the garden of your mouth, and you've got the white fence round the garden of your teeth. You want
Mhm.
to keep the puppy, the tip of your tongue, inside this garden fence.
Mhm.
But for the TH sounds, the puppy has to go out and explore the world.
Okay.
So if you put the tip of your tongue out, and then you bring your teeth down very gently and carefully, so that they're touching the top of your tongue and the bottom of your tongue, and then you just blow as hard as you can, like this.
Okay.
Very good. So then we can use it in words like think,
Think. Think.
think. See,
Think.
at the moment your tongue is staying inside your mouth, so you're saying think,
Think.
think. So now to get to saying think, what you can do is you can make sure your tongue comes outside.
Think.
Yeah, very good.
Oh.
You have to consciously think about putting your tongue out
Think.
because, like me, you have many years of habit of doing it a different way,
Right.
and you're not going to change a habit of a lifetime just by going, "Oh well, I've done it once, that's fine." It
Okay.
takes about 3 weeks of conscious practice to
Yes.
change an old habit and exchange it for a new habit.
Mm.
So if you practice 3 times a day for a couple of minutes at a time
Mhm.
for the next 3 weeks, let's see, it's the middle of January. So by the middle of February, if you're practicing just a couple of minutes at a time, 3 times a day, in a month's time, when you were thinking about speaking English, you would say think and three
Think.
and thought.
Think. Think.
Remember, you've got to blow as well. You've got to stick the tongue
Think.
out and blow.
Think. Think.
It's like playing a
Think.
flute. If you
Hmm.
put a flute in front of your mouth, but you don't blow across the blowhole,
Mhm.
nothing happens. You
Okay.
must blow across your tongue.
Think.
Yes.
Thank you so much
And
for
now
teaching me. Yeah.
I'm going to teach you another sound as well.
Okay.
You get two for the price of one.
Mhm.
If you can also make a buzz in your throat, which is called voicing, this part of your throat is called the voice box
Mhm.
informally in
Mhm.
English, or the
Mhm.
larynx if you're a medical person. And it has little folds of skin that flap very fast to make buzzing noises. And if you speak in a high pitched voice, they're traveling very fast. If you're speaking in a low pitched voice, they travel very slowly. But
Mm.
you have to have the buzz in your throat to change, which is just the sound of you blowing air over your tongue into.
Hmm.
It's a bit like the sound of a frightened snake. Just try the sound of a frightened snake. Oh,
Oh.
your noise cancellation is getting rid of it, unfortunately. Or
Yes. Yes.
if you can turn the sound of a frightened snake into the sound of an angry bee by adding the buzz. It goes from being into being zzz.
Z- z-
Yes, and you can make the same difference going from to zzz.
z-
You still stick your tongue out, you still blow across your tongue, but you also want to have the buzz in your throat. And that's for words like this and the. and these and those
The,
and they and then. Would you like to try just a couple of them? This
yes,
and that.
this and that.
Very good. You're getting your tongue out, you're
Hmm.
breathing across your tongue, and you're getting the buzz as well. That was excellent.
Thank you so
So I
much.
hope you feel maybe you already knew the words, but maybe you didn't already know that particular pronunciation.
Right, right. I didn't know that. Yes. We are all habitual of speaking with the mouth closed.
Having your lips closed and also your jaws tend not to move much. Often I see people speaking in some of the Indian languages, and maybe their teeth come about 5 millimeters apart. So we are talking very, very similarly with the syllable timed language, but also we are not really moving our jaw.
Okay.
And these two things is the opposite in English. In English, we're breathing a lot for all the loud syllables. And to get all that breath out, we open our mouth wide. You'll notice that often my mouth is looking very far open.
Right, right.
If if someone is taken to elocution classes,
Hmm.
even as a native speaker, sometimes I teach native speakers how to speak more clearly. And often in English, if you keep your mouth closed, if you keep your lips closed and you don't really move your teeth, that's called mumbling.
Hmm.
And it is a criticism in English because you're not opening your mouth wide, the noise isn't coming out, you're not making the loud sounds. And so people say that you're mumbling, and that's a strong complaint.
Hmm.
So if you were going to speak English, but you're going to use the mouth movements of Hindi and the breath management of Hindi and the lip closure of Hindi, it's going to sound very different to speaking English. So people who are listening for English, people whose mother languages are not Hindi or Gujarati or Tamil or any of the languages from round about India,
Hmm.
they will be listening for different things because many languages are louder. Italian, non parlo italiano. My mouth comes open, it's quite loud. I would also gesture a lot.
Hmm.
Spanish is kind of the same. It's a very expressive, loud language, still syllable timed, but louder. And so if you're interacting with someone who's speaking English but whose mother tongue is Italian, or whose mother tongue is Spanish, and Spanish is the next most widely spoken language in the world
Hmm.
after English,
Okay.
you will they will find it difficult if you are just talking like this. But if you're speaking to people from India, they're actually expecting you to talk like this. It's not a problem for them. So most of the time, people in India who are practicing their English are practicing with other people in India. And
Hmm.
what you have is what's called an interlanguage. It uses some aspects of Hindi, particularly pronunciation, emphasis, intonation, and it uses the words of English. Depending on what your skill level is, maybe you'll be using Hindi grammar.
Hmm.
Maybe you'll be using some English grammar. Maybe you'll be an advanced student and using a lot of English grammar. Maybe you'll use the word choices of English. Maybe you'll use the word choices of Hindi and then literally translate them one by one. I was working with someone to help them get a new job, giving them confidence in English for a job interview. And they were telling me about the godowns. And I couldn't, it took me quite a long time to work out what they meant was warehouses. And it's a word that's very commonly used in India to mean warehouse. But outside of India, it's not used at all.
Hmm.
So if you're speaking to someone from China, or someone from Japan, or someone from Brazil, or someone from Mexico, or someone from Germany, and you translate into English and use the word go down, no one's going to understand you, until eventually one of them is going to break and say, sorry, I don't understand that word. Could you explain it to me, please?
Okay.
And then you'll explain you mean warehouse, and
Mm.
then everyone knows, and then everything's fine. But for a while, there will be confusion. So
Yes.
if you can use the pronunciation of the English language, not you don't need to speak like someone from Brooklyn in New York. You don't need to sound like someone from Peckham in East London.
Mhm.
But you just need to use these extra sounds which are in English. And if you can, the rhythms of English. For instance, if I say bottle of water, it's a rhythm of bottle of water. If I say bottle of water, it's a different rhythm.
Yes.
And it turns out the pronunciation around the world in English is different. You've got bottle of water, bottle of water, bottle of water, bottle of
Mm.
water, bottle of water, bottle of water. The
Mm.
pronunciations are slightly different. They sound much more different than they actually are. They're all of them are still using only three vowel sounds, o, and a, but they sound very different.
Mhm.
But all of them have the identical rhythm. All of them are
Mm.
So you can get the pronunciation wrong if you and still be very clearly understood often if you get the rhythm right. But almost no one is teaching rhythm. I know about two other people that I've encountered either online or in real life, and it's weird because if I pull out this book here is dates back to the 1970s. It used to be one of the standard textbooks for university students learning phonetics. An
Okay.
introduction to the pronunciation of English is a
Mhm.
very famous book. The man who wrote it became president of the International Phonetic Association. Of course, pronunciation isn't as important as rhythm. And it's just a kind of passing thought. And he goes on to talk about pronunciation for the rest of the book again. The reason that the teachers of English don't teach about rhythm is because when they went to university and were taught by professors like this, they would just mention it in passing and then go on to other things. And so the students, the teachers of tomorrow, didn't realize that rhythm was so important because it was just mentioned as a just passing aside that it was an important thing. And so one of the things I'm constantly trying to um, let people know is that rhythm is very important in English. Often it is what we listen for rather than the sounds.
So I want to ask you, if a person is learning English and trying to make sentences and he is not able to frame correct sentences, what is more important, grammar, or he should just start speaking right away? Should he master grammar
Uh,
first?
I think there are 9 rules of grammar that you want to learn early in your learning journey.
Okay.
If you have gone 3 years and you still haven't learned these 9 rules of grammar, definitely back up, focus on those 9 rules of grammar because
Mhm.
those 9 rules are basic and they are important for communication.
Okay.
If you spend all your time learning phrasal verbs or bizarre, unusual grammatical forms, don't bother with that. I
Mm.
always think learn the phonetics, and I think of it as a three-legged stool. Oops, 3 legs. Yeah, there we have it. Phonetics is the most important, grammar
Mhm.
and vocabulary. And you want to learn a little bit of grammar and a little bit of vocabulary, and a little bit more grammar and a little bit more vocabulary.
Okay.
You
Mhm.
don't need to master all of grammar before you speak. You don't need to master all of the vocabulary of English before you speak. In fact, no one knows the entire vocabulary of English. A genius in English will know somewhere between 40,000 and 50,000 words. And there are 250,000 root words in English. And if you end up with all the roots added, all the endings added to the roots, there are over 1 million words of English. It's one of the biggest languages in the world. And then
Mm.
you get combinations of words like phrasal verbs, where the individual words get used together and they no longer mean anything to do with the individual words. They mean a
Right.
completely different thing.
Hmm.
So there's always more vocabulary to learn, so don't worry about it. It's easier to learn vocabulary for understanding than it is to learn vocabulary for speaking. About 20 times easier to learn a word to recognize it when someone says it than to use a word in speech. So I always say, speak in short, simple sentences. Use short, simple words. You will get a lot more practice with those words because you're going to use them over and over again. If you use unusual words, if you learn a new word, maybe you read a news magazine and there is a word that you go, oh, that's an impressive word. None of my friends know that word. I'm going to make sure I use it in my conversation next time to be very impressive to my friends. They will be amazed at how wonderful my English is. It doesn't work that way. It really doesn't work that way when you speak to native speakers. It works the opposite way. You won't get very much practice with this word. You won't really know what it means, its context of use, its connotations, the necessary secondary meanings that it brings. You probably won't get the pronunciation right.
Mm.
So you will probably try and fail to use an impressive word. That's the likelihood. And that's much less impressive than succeeding in using a simple word. If you use a simple word successfully, that's a good piece of communication. If you use a very unusual word that maybe no one else knows anyway, and you use it unsuccessfully amongst native speakers, a native speaker who does that will be an object of fun and ridicule by the other native speakers.
Mm.
And we've built that habit up over decades. So if you try it and you fall into the same pitfall trap that those native speakers did by using words that they really don't know, you can expect the same amount of fun and ridicule to be pointed in your direction. And unfortunately, we are ridicule averse as humans. We hate it when we sincerely try something and people laugh at us. One of the pioneers of language education, I think his name was Francois Gouin.
Mm.
He was a Frenchman who decided he would learn German by moving to Germany in the 1880s. And he thought what he would do is buy a book of German grammar, hire a room, rent a room, and he lived in the room for several weeks reading his book or books of German grammar. And he thought, I've finished the books of grammar, I've cracked it, I'm going out into the streets of Hamburg to talk to the native German speakers. And they all just laughed at him because he sounded so weird.
Mm.
And what he did then was he decided he obviously hadn't practiced enough. So what he would do is he would buy extra books of grammar and extra vocabulary books, and he would lock himself into the room for even longer this time. I think he stayed in the room for months on end.
My
And then
God.
he went back out into the streets, confident that this time he had the grammar, he knew the words. But no one understood him still, and they all found him laughable again. And so he went back to France, a very disappointed, unhappy man.
Mm.
And worse of all, he went home, and his young nephew or niece, who had been born not long before he went off to Germany, in the time he'd been away failing to learn German, the niece had learnt French. The niece had gone from not knowing French to speaking French, and he felt quite humiliated. And
Mm.
luckily for all of us, he then went off and wrote some books and some methods of learning languages that got used for a long time to come and were the basis of many other methods. So his disappointment and his failure led to lots of other people succeeding. But we don't want to be like Francois Gouin. We want to communicate and be accepted for communicating well. So short, simple words in short, simple sentences. That way, you will get so much practice, you will start to think in English for those simple grammatical structures. You will start to think in English with those words quite early on. And often teachers tell us what we should do is we should think in our target language. Unfortunately, that's not a strategy, it's an outcome. We think in our target language after we've done the practicing. It's not a method of practicing, it's a result of doing the practice. So, short, simple words in short, simple sentences is the way to go. Build up the grammar gradually, build up the vocabulary gradually.
But Indian English learners are crazy about new words. They even comment under my videos that, ma'am, please teach some new words. And unless they hear some new words which are unusual and fancy and stylish, because apparently most of them want to impress other people by speaking English, you know?
And the problem is that they will impress other people in India because the other people in India cannot assess whether the word has been used correctly or not. There is one of my favorite examples is a person who is styles themselves as a consultant on English to major corporations in India, so that senior corporate executives can be prepared for traveling abroad to be impressive around the world in English. This person follows this method that you've just outlined. And I think one of her books is called In Search of Excellency.
Okay.
Unfortunately for her, excellency does not mean what she thinks it means. She meant to say in search of excellence. Excellence is the state of being excellent, or the property of being excellent. Excellency is an honorific title given to ambassadors and senior members of certain churches. So what she meant was, be excellent. Go in search of being excellent. And what she wrote was, go in search of ambassadors and senior priests. If you make mistakes like that and you go abroad or try it with native speakers, that is not impressive. Native speakers strive for simplicity. The simplest way of using English is to use complicated English to say simple things. That's the worst type of English. Often people in India want that. They want to say simple things in a complicated way to show what wonderful English and complicated English they know. But really, if you want to say simple things, use simple English. Then sometimes we have to say complicated things. Now, sometimes there are specialist words for particularly complicated concepts and ideas. So you can use complicated English to explain complicated ideas. But the highest level of English is to say complicated things and use simple English. And what I would love to impress on everyone I meet from India is simple English is better English. It's more impressive English once you travel outside of India. So always think about one set of rules for inside India and a completely opposite set of rules when you're communicating internationally, maybe to people in China or Brazil or the USA or Canada or the UK. Because there, if you misuse complicated English, you will be thought of as bad at English. Because we know what the words mean, and we also know that we should be using simpler English to facilitate communication with our fellows.
Yes. I also tell my viewers that English is for communication. If we are able to convey our thoughts and emotions and feelings, that is enough. That is the purpose of a language. It's not to impress the other person. That's what I feel that in one sentence, if I'm using 3 fancy words, what's the point?
Absolutely. I can tell people that I have an extensive, expansive, baroque, polysyllabic vocabulary? I can say that. I'm
Yes.
not going to, but I certainly can, because what I mean is I know a lot of big words. It's much better to say, I know a lot of big words. I know a lot of big, impressive words,
Mm.
rather than say, I have an expansive, extensive, baroque, polysyllabic vocabulary.
True, true.
But if sometimes people, when they're communicating, what they want to communicate isn't actually what they're talking about. What they really want to communicate is how superior they are at English, and therefore how superior their intelligence is, and how superior their education is. That's really what they're trying to communicate.
Right,
And
right.
that's why they try to use an expansive, extensive Baroque polysyllabic vocabulary instead of simply using some small, simple words.
Right. I would like to know one thing. If I learn a particular word, that's a new word for me. How to make it a part of me, how to retain it and become so confident about it. I'm unsure whether I should use this word or not because it has just been added to my vocabulary. How to make it a part of myself?
Well, the first question is it a big word that you already can express the concept of in small words?
No, normal word.
Okay, well, that's okay then. Because if it was a big word, which you could substitute small words that you already know for,
Mhm.
I would dump the new big word. Just don't bother learning it. Most
Okay.
people try to learn too much vocabulary. The next point is what you said. How can I retain it? That's such a vital aspect. Learning something is easy. Remembering it 1 month from now is difficult. And so there is a technique, I can't remember the exact name for it offhand, but it basically means you extend the revision period each
Okay.
time.
Mhm.
Um, it might be spread study, but I think spread study is when you split study into blocks. And so if you learn the word and you practice it, you use it in context, you think about synonyms, you try using it in collocations, in standard phrases. And you do that a bit. You've got the word. Great. If you do that with a new word every day, after 30 days, you still probably only have learned one new word because all the other words have been forgotten. So
Um,
retaining is key. So if you learn a word on one day and revise it again an hour later, then your brain decides that, oh, that word's useful. I shouldn't clear it out. I should not declutter the brain by getting
mm,
rid of this new useless word. It turns out it is useful. I'll hang on to it for a little longer this time. If you then revise it again after 1 day, your brain again says, oh, this must be a useful word. I held on to it for a day. I'll hold on to it for a bit longer this time. If you
mm,
practice it again after about 3 days, and then after about a week, then after a couple of weeks, then after a month, you will retain that word possibly for ever.
okay.
There is one word I learnt at the age of 12. It is a word from one Amazonian Indian tribe. It's their word for three. The word is Poetararunarok. I've no idea if the pronunciation is right. That's just how it was spelt for me.
Mhm.
They don't count any higher than that. So it's basically 1, 2, Poetararunarok. Because I every so often take out this word and look at it and remember it and smile and think, oh, that's a fun word. My brain gets used to keeping it. It doesn't throw it out with the garbage, doesn't throw it out on the trash heap. It says, this word is useful. I will retain this word. And so now there is a language spoken probably only by about 50 people in the world. And that's one of the languages that I at least know one word in.
Yes.
And
Amazing.
I won't say quite how many decades ago it was that I first learned it, but it was many decades.
Mm.
And so retention is the key part, and you do that by extending the revision period slightly, double it, triple it, something like that.
But you have cleared one misunderstanding, because I also felt like other people in India that I needed to learn at least 5 to 10 words every single day, and I need to improve my vocabulary every single day. Instead of just focusing on what I say, if I'm able to clearly express myself, I have to add new words to my vocabulary each day, because we have to create content. We need to give people what they need, right? And they keep asking for new words.
There's such a big difference between what people want and what people need to communicate.
True.
And the problem is that they come to us as teachers and they give us money if we give them what they want. And as teachers, what we want them to focus on is what they need to communicate well. And if there's a big mismatch between these two things, generally speaking, they go and find themselves another teacher who will give them what they want, whether
Mm,
they need it or not, and take the money.
right.
I like to think of them as less scrupulous teachers. But equally, the learners want what the learners want. And we
Okay.
have to acknowledge what they want. And I'm not going to say pander to it, but at least acknowledge it, take account of it, and give them something that will, you know, satisfy that desire on their part for the things that they want. And they want extra words. It's true. Often the extra words come at the expense of learning the things that you need. But if you're not speaking, if you're listening to people, generally speaking, native speakers and more advanced speakers will use words that we don't personally know as much or
Mhm.
as well. But the great thing is, if someone uses a word in front of you, it's a prompt. And your brain is very good at taking something that someone offers you as a prompt and rummaging about in the back of the brain saying, oh, I know that word. Let me go and look in the filing cabinet. Here's here's the meaning of that word.
Okay.
But if you say, here is the meaning of a word, now what word is that? Which is the situation when we're trying to
Mm,
speak. I'm going to travel fast. I'm going to travel fast on my feet. Is not walk, because walk is traveling on your feet quite slowly. It's another word. What is the word for traveling on your feet? Traveling by foot, but traveling fast. Uh, and if someone said to you, oh, that word is run, you'll go, oh, yes, of course it's run. Because when someone gives you the word and asks you to understand it, that's much easier. So it is worthwhile reading magazines, listening to movies, listening to podcasts, being exposed to this other vocabulary. But you don't need to learn it well enough to use it when you are speaking. That's crucial. You can have a two-way communication if you understand complex words, which you wouldn't be able to think if you had a blank sheet of paper and were writing an essay. You don't need that level of vocabulary when you speak. The job as a speaker of English as a foreign language is to be understood.
mm,
That's the job. If you're understood, big tick, the job is done.
right.
If you are not understood for whatever reason, that's a fail. The good news is, um, a phrase a friend of mine told me is that in universities in the UK, and if you do an honours degree, there are different categories of pass. There's a pass, just an ordinary pass. Then there's a pass, a third level pass, third level honours. Then there's second degree honours. And that's split into a 2-2, second level, or 2-1, the higher level. And then the top level of pass for a degree is a first. You have to average 70% in your final year exams to get the very top level of degree. So I always remind everyone that you can be wrong 30% of the time, and that's still the best type of pass you can hope to achieve. So don't worry about getting 100%. Worry about getting 70%. 70% is a first-class honours pass. If you can
Great.
get it right 70% of the time,
Mhm.
everything will be good.
So they should not be so scared of making mistakes. If they are 70% correct, the job is done.
Pretty much.
Mm.
And that's one of the ways that there can be so many native speaker accents in English. If I say a bottle of water, generalized American, to someone who speaks standard Southern British, a bottle of water,
Mhm.
it's only an 85% match. And if I say a bottle of water, that's only an 85% match for the generalized American.
Mhm.
But 85% is well above that 70% threshold. And they understand each other perfectly. If you can
Yes.
get to 70%, that's good. If you can get to about 25% of pronunciation and rhythm, you'll go from people just simply not understanding you to, if they have the mental capacity and the energy and they give all their attention and focus onto what you are saying, they will
Mhm.
probably understand you most of the time. So 25% is kind of the bare minimum for being understood. 70%, well, 80% and up, people will understand you pretty much flawlessly without effort. The problem is in the middle, between 25% and 80%, people are having to put in a lot of effort to understand you. And it's
Mhm.
a bit like the sprinter Usain Bolt. He can run incredibly fast. He can run faster than anyone else in the world if he puts in the effort. But he can only put in the effort for less than 10 seconds. If you get someone to put all their attention on your speaking, but the grammar's poor, you're using unusual vocabulary, the pronunciation is of your mother tongue, not the target language. You're using the methods of emphasis of your mother tongue, not of the target language. They might be able to understand you if you hit, enough of the pronunciation and rhythm, but they're going to tire out. If you force them to do all this extra brain work,
Mhm.
probably not going to thank you for it.
Okay.
If someone forces you to do work and you haven't asked to do the work and you haven't volunteered to do the work, but someone is forcing you to do extra work, as humans, we don't like that typically. An example I often give is if we're working in the office and we get to the last thing on a Friday evening, we've written our last bit of code, it's passed the unit tests, we're ready to go home and relax with our family for the weekend. And our project leader comes up and says, Meena, we need you to write another 3 programs. Here are the specs. Write them before you go home tonight. We don't think, oh, extra work. I love extra work. What a wonderful boss. I don't like my family anyway. And who wanted to go out socializing over a meal at a
Mhm.
restaurant? No,
Mhm.
I get to stay at work and in the office and do lots of extra work. How wonderful. No, we don't think that. Or, well, most people don't think that. I'm sure there are workaholics who will feel that way. Most of us would think, what a horrible boss. Doesn't he know that I've got plans this weekend? I
Mhm.
want to go home. I want to go home now. I was ready to go home. I've planned my day carefully so that I can go home. And it's a bit like that when we're talking to someone where the communication is difficult and we have to put in a lot of effort to translate what they're saying from their partway house, from their mother tongue into what they're saying with mother tongue pronunciation, mother tongue rhythm, mother tongue grammar, mother tongue word choices. And then we're going, okay, I think what they mean is Okay, I think that word probably was such and such a word. Okay, if that word is that word, then probably the sentence was intended to mean this. Okay, I understand what they're trying to say. I will now reply. You can do that, but you can't do it all day, all night. You're going to
Mm.
get tired out. If it was exhausting and it was hard work, the next time you see that person, maybe you're not going to want to strike up a casual conversation.
True.
Maybe you're going to want to just walk past them and hope that they don't make eye contact so that
Mm.
you can talk to someone who's less hard work to talk to.
Yes.
If you're a project leader on an international project team and there are four people all trying to put their ideas across, and three of them can put their ideas across, and you can understand those ideas without effort, and one person attempts to put their idea across, and it's really hard to understand what they're trying to say. And you're also having to pay attention to the other three people. One of those other three people is going to have their idea picked up. One of those other three people is going to be rewarded for a job well done, identified for promotion or for bonuses, identified as a project leader of tomorrow. And the people who find it difficult to communicate, but maybe have excellent technical skills, they will be technical drudges being assigned work that they are expected to do successfully, possibly for the rest of their time with the organization. They will have a job, but they won't necessarily have a career. Communication isn't just about being barely understood. Lots of people say to me, as long as someone understood me, that's okay. That's all that matters.
Mm.
And I say, no, it's not all that matters. What matters is them understanding you easily
Mm.
and wanting to communicate again in the future
Correct.
and valuing the things that you had to say. If you're at a job interview, maybe the job is for an international organization that uses English frequently. And you go to the job interview and there are five candidates. Four of them are easily understood by the interviewer. Maybe their answers to the interview questions aren't as good as yours. Maybe you've got excellent answers to the interview questions, but the interviewer finds it very hard to understand what you're trying to communicate. Maybe they understand you in the end, but maybe they only get through 3 sentences of understanding in the time available instead of 12. It's unlikely they're going to choose you to fill the role. There are so many more aspects to English than simply being understood briefly if the other person has the time and the energy and the inclination to do a lot of the work for you. If you can do more of the work for them, if you can provide the sounds they're expecting to hear, if you can use the rhythms that they're listening for, if you can use the grammar that flows naturally in their mind, your life will be a happier life. That's my strong conviction.
Yes, I think if talking to you had been hard for me, if you had been using very hard words, which were a lot of work for me, then I think I also would have been waiting for the meeting to get over.
Indeed. If I had said that I cannot wait to tell you all about my anti-disestablishmentarianistic flocky-knocky-nihilipilification, I'm sure you would have thought, what an idiot. Doesn't he know that these words are not in common use in India? And you would have been right, and I would have been wrong.
Okay, so I have been asking questions nonstop. Would you like to ask me anything?
Yes. So how long have you been teaching English? And what
It's
is
been
your favorite question to get asked by someone who is learning?
um, it's been 10 years. But I started my YouTube channel 4 years ago. Before that, I taught at my coaching center, at home, offline teaching. I used to enjoy that as well because, there is a different kind of bond when you see them physically.
Yes, when I was teaching children physical activities, it's very hard to do remotely. I've tried teaching it over Zoom. It really is not as successful and it's not as much fun. You're right. The
Mhm.
bonding experience is very different. So,
Yes.
what made you move from your software development background to teaching?
Actually, I did software development till I had my children. So at that time, the job was hectic and I wanted to take a break from work for them. So after they got a little older, then I thought of starting something with which I could give enough time to them. That's why I started with my coaching center at home, which worked pretty well. So I taught all subjects as as I was teaching other subjects. Some parents told me that, "Ma'am, you speak English well. Why don't you teach spoken English as well?" That's how I got into spoken English. Then I started loving teaching English so much that I stopped teaching other subjects, and that's how I got into this. And then when COVID started, I had to shut down my coaching center. That's how I got into YouTube. So now I
That
feel
was
that,
how I got into English as well. COVID,
yes. Okay, because of COVID.
yes.
Okay, so before COVID, what were you doing?
So I was teaching children's physical activities. So I was teaching various Western martial arts,
Oh.
modern Olympic rules fencing. I was teaching classical swordsmanship. I was teaching historical European martial arts. And I would also teach a little bit of Japanese swordsmanship to the children as well. And this is because, like you, I had children of my own. And when they were young, I noticed that they and their friends wanted to spend their time watching DVDs and playing computer games. And
Mm-hmm.
I thought, when I was a child, I was off down in the woods, in the forests, on my bicycle, running about with the other kids from the neighborhood. And now, for various societal reasons, children are not encouraged to just go out spontaneously and play outdoors. There's a lot more adult supervision kind of expected, or they're allowed to go off and carry out physical activity if it's booked in at a particular place that they travel to, rather than going to the nearest open space spontaneously and running about as self-directed play. So what I realized is if the children liked football or rugby or cricket or netball or basketball, there was a lot of provision for that. So children who liked those sorts of things were already well catered for. I was trying to get the people who wouldn't otherwise be physically active to run about. And I remembered back in my childhood, I, as a child, always preferred to have my nose in a book than to be out.
Okay.
And on Saturdays in my country, there were only three TV channels at the time.
Mm.
And on Saturday afternoons, the two main channels would have sports on both channels. And the third channel would have old movies, maybe
Okay.
westerns, maybe old melodramas, or maybe swashbuckling films with swordplay.
Hmm.
I loved that. So
Okay.
I wanted to learn how to use swords from a young age. And when I
Mhm.
finally got to university, I got the chance to do that. And over the decades, I practiced more and more. And one of my other claims to fame is my teacher's teacher is Darth Vader from Star Wars.
Mhm.
Star Wars in the West is a very famous film franchise. And the main villain in the first movies is a man called Darth Vader. And the man who played Darth Vader in the sword fights is also the man who developed lightsaber fighting techniques to begin with. So he was a swords master. He taught my swords master, who taught me. So it's one of my claims to fame. When I tell the children that I'm teaching that my teacher's teacher is Darth Vader from Star Wars, they're all very impressed, and I love that. And once you've got the student impressed and they want to listen to you, that's half the battle done.
Right.
Um, that's definitely half the battle.
Yes, you have to win the heart of the student first. When they start loving you, they will learn whatever you teach.
Yes.
Yes.
Um, it's much better to teach with carrots and
Mhm.
love than sticks and hate.
True, true. I also believe that. So, anything else that you would like to add, or should we wrap up the
What
session
is the
now? Yes, yes.
one more
Mhm,
question for you?
mhm.
What is your favorite question to be asked by a student? What is your least favorite question to be asked by a student?
By a student. Okay. Um, Difficult to think about it. Why do you like teaching? When people ask me
Mm.
this, yes, I love that. And least favorite, nothing is like, there's nothing as such. So, why I love
Oh, that's
teaching?
good.
Yeah.
I thought when I started out teaching
Hmm.
that I would get bored with people
Mm-hmm.
asking the same thing over and over and over. I just assumed I would get bored. And what I discovered after several years is because the the light bulb going on over someone's head, even though it's the same thing you've taught them as you've taught many other people, that
Mm.
light bulb moment above their head, that's a new light bulb moment over a new head. And it's therefore it keeps it fresh and keeps it fun and keeps it interesting, keeps it being something that I truly love.
Yes. So when I also teach the same concept million times, I also never get bored, and I my only focus is to make them understand.
Yeah,
That's it. Yeah. That's what I love about teaching, that we plant a concept in their head, and if it stays there and if they understand it completely, my job is done and feel that I've won.
absolutely. And also we feel that they've won too.
Yeah,
And that's
definitely.
a big part of it.
Right.
Knowing that this is something that we feel is important and that they have grasped.
Right. So that's a
You're
win-win
sure that
situation.
absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's a lovely note to wrap up on, don't you?
Mm. It was so lovely talking to you, and you have cleared that
Thank you.
misunderstanding, because I was also having this burden that I need to keep improving my vocabulary. I think I should just keep watching more native speakers and learn some vocabulary in context, not otherwise. Like, cramming the new words from a dictionary does not work.
You'll learn them, but you won't retain them.
Correct. So,
And
why
there's a
waste the
big
effort?
absolutely.
Yes.
That's what I literally try to teach people who come into my rooms and say,
Mhm.
Gordon, I try to learn 5 to 10 new words a day.
Just to
But
forget
at
the
the
other.
end of a month,
Yes.
yeah, at
Yes.
the end of the month, I don't remember them. How can I make sure I remember them at the end of the month? And I say, you won't. It's just all that time and effort that you've put in, it's just gone. Why not use the time and effort for something that will be useful?
Yes. Yes. Okay, then. Bye bye. It was
Thank
so
you.
lovely connecting with you. Take care.
Lovely.